was taking an art elective. I learned from experience that art electives are the easiest classes to make friends in because comparison of each other's work provides conversation starters, and because art classes are very non-structured. So I took photography, did wonders for me. Now, it is interesting why I decided to take photography. You see, with my fine motor impairment, I could not draw, paint, sculpt, but I could photograph because I can turn knobs and push buttons very easily, but working with a paintbrush or a pencil, not so much. So photography really worked out for me. Now, ever since this is National Association for the Dually Diagnosed, I figure I might as well talk about my other diagnosis. While the Asperger's cropped up around elementary school, it wasn't until late middle school that I learned about my second diagnosis, bipolar disorder. And while Asperger's affects every single moment of every single day of my life, the bipolar disorder only crops up occasionally, but it's very serious when it does. Of course, the trademark of bipolar is mood swings, which I had in full force. When I was manic, nothing could bring me down. When I was depressed, nothing could bring me up. And I would be manic in times where I should be sad, and I would be depressed in times when I should be perfectly happy. But that doesn't happen much anymore. Another interesting thing that came with the bipolar was hallucinations. I have them both visually and auditorial. And the visual hallucinations are a bit weird because they're mostly animals. The auditory hallucinations are either people calling my name or hearing my alarm clock or the school bell when I'm not supposed to. I have a strategy for coping with these hallucinations. I just run it through my mind. If it doesn't make sense, it's probably not real. So if I see a dog sitting in the middle of the school cafeteria, I realize it's probably not real and I go back to eating my sandwich. But sometimes it's not all that clear. And here's a story about that. My freshman year of high school, in English class, I kept on hearing my name just being faintly whispered from the back of the room. And I knew for a fact that this was a hallucination, so I thought. So my parents asked all of the aides and all of the classmates in my English classroom to keep their ears open, and they heard it too. And you want to know why?
Why?
Well, a boy sitting in the back of the class had a crush on me and was whispering my name under his breath. But the hallucinations only really come while I'm under stress. I had them a lot in my freshman year because the transition from middle school to high school is a stressful one. I don't experience them nearly as much anymore. And of course, having both diagnoses, Asperger's and bipolar, led to some difficulties in and of itself. There are two different benefit systems, one for developmental like autism and one for mental like bipolar. I could only qualify for one or the other, which did not work out because I needed both. But apparently these people don't understand that. I eventually did qualify under the mental health system, but that's not much of a help for me because the Asperger's affects me a heck of a lot more than the bipolar does. Another issue with having dual diagnosis was finding a school. The Asperger schools did not want me for my bipolar. The bipolar schools did not want me for my Asperger's. Eventually, I was taken in by the Interdisciplinary Skills Program taught by Mr. Lockwood. It started out in a high school called Shaker High School, And then Shaker booted us to turn our room into a computer lab, so we moved to Bethlehem High School, which is where I'm going to be graduating from. So, in conclusion, living with dual diagnosis, both Asperger's and bipolar, has affected me in so many ways. And one of the biggest helps, I'm about to say something pretty controversial here, was my medication. I am currently taking clozapine for my bipolar symptoms. It was hard to find the right medication for me. I had to go through a lot of adverse side effects like weight gain, drowsiness, and for a while I was overdosed and constantly slept through class. But really, the pills had provided me with a lot more harm than good.
Good than harm.
So, I mean good than harm, I meant good than harm. Sorry, I'm weird. So, in conclusion, I have a life that's very, very different from the lives of my peers. And you know what? I'm perfectly happy with that. So are there any questions from the audience?
We have a microphone.
I'm curious to know what career you might be pursuing.
Well, I've considered a lot of options. One thing I was considering was occupational therapy, but I figured that if it's something you need, you probably shouldn't be giving it. I eventually settled on ultrasound technician because it was compatible to my needs. Because of my Asperger's, I do better working one-on-one than in a group, and that's what ultrasound technicians did. It's also a very low-stress job, doesn't require a heck of a lot of college compared to medical school. It just seemed pretty compatible to my needs. Any other questions?
I have one. You're a great public speaker.
Thank you so much.
I hope you can do that at the same time you become an ultrasound technician.
That's what I'm hoping. Well, as I've said to various people, I'm really only getting a career as an ultrasound technician to pay the rent, but I really want to do this public speaking.
And Melanie, I don't think you're going to have any problem in public speaking. Is that a great luncheon address? I'm speechless. That was terrific. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank her parents for bringing her here.
Our pleasure.
So that's our luncheon address. At this point in time, at 1:30, we start our afternoon set of concurrent sessions. And Lisa, do you have a schedule in front of you?
1:30, yeah.
1:30, and I'll just read off what's going on and where. Just a reminder, at the conclusion of the day, would you please hand in your evaluation.